So welcome to today. Today is, what is today? Is it the 2nd of March? That's right. 2nd of March, 2024. In the world of the relative world uh, of time and space. And I'm coming to you from Winjabul Waibal country in the Bundjalung Nation of northern New South Wales, Lismore. And I pay respects to the elders past, present, and emerging of that country. So today, as always, on these days, I'll be endeavoring to invite you to transform dukkha to liberation. And for those who don't know what dukkha refers to suffering at a gross level, but also at a subtle level, it refers to unsatisfactoriness, things that aren't going quite right. You know, the fact of imperfection, the fact that life is essentially, well, there can be satisfaction found in life. There can be peace and great happiness found in life, but it's not found in conditioned experience, meaning experience that is impermanent. Things that arise and pass away are unable to satisfy because they change. That's all it is. So today I'll be inviting you to transform suffering or unsatisfactoriness or something that's not quite right to freedom from that bind. And of course, the main way that's achieved is through something called the Eightfold Path. And the Eightfold Path is the Buddha's teachings of the path of freedom. And the Eightfold Path is the fourth noble truth, and the other three truths are like these. There is first truth is that there is unsatisfactoriness, there is dukkha. This is the reality of life. That things change, that we get burdened by aging, sickness, and death, by pain, grief, lamentation, and despair. That includes emotional pain, getting what we don't want, not getting what we want, and being parted from what is dear to us. In fact, we are burdened and we experience dukkha from clinging to what's called the self, the aggregates of the self. They're, these components of the self, which are, form, our body, feelings, whether something's pleasant, unpleasant, or neither, perceptions, which are the perceptions of things, like the way we recognize things, mental formations or mental creations, which are thoughts and this creative aspect of our mind, and consciousness, which is the knowing of experience, what we call the knowing of experience. And what we do is we kind of cling to these changing experiences and we pull them together as an ego, basically, as a lasting self, a self that's we think is going to last forever, that is enduring and can bring satisfaction, but we cling to it with this kind of we cling to it with what's called clinging and craving. We hold on to it tightly, and that, in essence, is suffering. If we can kind of let go of that a little bit, not that we become completely spaced out and kind of don't find anything to have our stable attention on, but what we find is that we find a bit of freedom from the ego. Rather than cling on to an ego, we find a sense of being part of something greater than an individualized, egocentric self, something like that. And that's really liberating. It's such a relief to let go of the burden of ego. So that's the first truth. The second truth is that there's an origins of this unsatisfactoriness, which are craving and clinging and this whole sort of bind of reactive cycling that's driven by craving, it's driven by greed, ignorance, and hatred, and that keeps us bound to suffering. But the wonderful thing is that when we see that, when we realize that, we let go, and then what we experience is the third truth. We let go of whatever we're clinging on. To the extent that we can let go of clinging, to that extent we can experience freedom from suffering. Sometimes it's just relative freedom, and every now and then, with some beings, there is absolute freedom. There's a realization of nirvana, which cannot be described, but it's this enduring sense of not being bound by the causes of suffering and suffering itself, or dukkha itself. So that's the third truth. And the practice is the Eightfold Path, which is the fourth truth. And the fourth truth, as you probably heard me say, many of you heard me say many, many times, involves three components. It involves ethics, meditation, and wisdom. And essentially this usually begins with wisdom, actually, but it's kind of thought of as a circular kind of wheel. So it begins with right view, or right, and then it's right intention, then it's right speech, right action, right livelihood, which is the ethical component. Those last three are the ethical component. And then we have right effort or energy, mindfulness and concentration, which is the meditation component. So one way we can think about this on a relative level is that when we have right view, it's like we see a situation clearly. We see what's going on. We can see, oh, this is causing my suffering, and if I do this, that will liberate me a little bit. It can be relative. It can be as simple as, something I noticed that sometimes I look at I was looking up something on a messenger yesterday, and I had to go onto Facebook, and I went onto Facebook and I started to scroll through Facebook, and I was getting caught up in all these stories, and it took 10 minutes, and I realized that my mind was all scattered, and I was getting caught up in all sorts of things. And I realized that was I could see clearly that was the cause of suffering, being caught up in the pit, or the never-ending hole of Facebook. I'm sorry, I'm criticizing Facebook a little bit there, but that's what was happening to me. So I made an intention. I made an intention to go away, to turn it off, and to restrain from opening it up, at least for a couple of days. So right view, seeing something, right intention is making the decision and the intention to do something different. And then when we do that, we act in ways that are in line with our good understanding and our best intentions, and we act in ways that are ethical with our body, speech, and mind. And this refers to the next three components on the Eightfold Path: right speech, right actions, and right livelihood. So, in regards to seeing a relative pattern that's causing us suffering and making attention to differently, we act in ways that are in alignment with our good understanding and our best intentions. And when we do that, we have a level of composure. I noticed when I was going through Facebook, my mind was getting caught up in sensual desire and all sorts of stuff, just kind of getting dragged into all sorts of things. And that was disturbing the equilibrium of my mind space. So when we actually protect ourselves by maintaining what is actions that are right for us, then we have this kind of mental stability. We have a composure, a capacity to look deeply into our heart minds, into our lives, and see deeply past the superficial stuff, and see deeply into deeper causes of our suffering, and have a deeper insight and deeper understanding. So then we make more intentions and so on. Now, the way we see deeply, the way we cultivate our mind is with energy or effort, which is this energy to incline towards the wholesome. Mindfulness, which we can describe as, I mean, there's many ways of describing mindfulness, but let's describe it as soft, awake presence, like a presence with something, willingness to be with something and kind of sit with it, be with it, see along with it. So soft, awake presence, and then that gives rise to, what happens then is our mind and our energies, our mental energies, and our attention and awareness begins to kind of get gathered and focused and moving together, which is called concentration or samadhi. And from that, we see clearly. We see clearly what's going on. And then we can make good intentions and so on and so forth. It's like a wheel that goes around in a circle. Sorry, doesn't go around in a circle. It's like a wheel that moves and rolls towards freedom. It's kind of moving. It does go in a circle, but it's sort of moving in a manner that's leading towards liberation. So that was just a very brief summary of the Eightfold Path. And what I'd like to focus on today is some of the strategies we use within that Eightfold Path. When we think about meditation, what we think about is kind of two aspects to it. One aspect is called serenity. The other aspect is called insight. And they have different features and characteristics. The serenity component has as a feature emphasizing samadhi, emphasizing concentration. The insight component has as a feature emphasizing mindfulness. It's just been my observations. The insight component sort of deconstructs things. It's like it looks into things and it breaks things up and deconstructs our problems. The serenity approach tends to gather and get a sense of unity and togetherness, and it actually gives us power. And it involves a stillness and a quietude and a settling. And the insight component usually results in understanding. It's like it breaks things up and sees them clearly for what they are. Sometimes the serenity aspect is called directed meditation. And sometimes the insight component is called, or the insight aspect is called undirected. What this means is that with the directed meditation, we're choosing an object and we're putting our attention on that. Or sometimes we don't choose the object just appears and we go into that. We direct our attention to it, which is kind of pretty well like what happens with serenity meditation. The undirected meditation is more like we don't direct our mind anywhere, but we sort of sit back and we are aware. We're watching things, and we're kind of gaining understanding and wisdom by just noticing things, noticing what's happening. So, of course, insight and serenity work together. And in the Buddha's day, in the time of the Buddha, he didn't separate these types of meditation differently apart. Like you hear a lot about insight meditation. People say, "Oh, do you practice insight meditation?" And I go, "Oh, yeah, I do." But it's not separate from serenity meditation as far as I'm concerned. There is an aspect to insight meditation, and there's an aspect to serenity meditation, just as I've talked about. But they're not separate. They work together. They work together in a way that they support each other. What happens with serenity meditation is it gives us focus. It really helps us focus on things, and clarity and stillness and power, so we can see into things. And the insight component uses that power to discern what it's seeing, to see the characteristics of existence, and to see how things work together. So these two components work together. This is a very important thing to understand in our practice. And within that, within within the whole Eightfold Path, including these components of meditation, we have specific strategies that work with liberation. And later in the morning, I'll be giving a talk on where I'm focusing on the 7 factors of awakening, but I'll also introduce some other practices I've noticed in contemporary psychology, and that are sort of similar in the way that they help discern what's happening and lead towards liberation. And there's a couple of common contemporary meditation, maybe even contemporary psychology processes that are out there. One is called RAIN. Actually, there's 2 called RAIN, but they refer to different things slightly. The first RAIN is from Michelle MacDonald, who is an insight meditation teacher, and it's used to work with difficult emotions or painful emotions. What this acronym stands for, actually, I've got it. If you can see that, there's a little thing, little poster. I can send that to you if you want it. I don't know where I got that from, but it describes RAIN. The R of RAIN refers to recognizing something, like you recognize a pattern or emotion, or you could even name it, like, oh, right now I'm feeling sad, or right now I'm feeling angry, or right now I'm feeling happy. So you recognize it. The A of Michelle MacDonald's version of RAIN refers to acceptance. And this means the willingness to experience. And it's opposite to denial of an experience. So you're kind of facing up to the experience, and you're seeing it for what it is. You're not denying it. You don't have to agree with it, but it is what's happening. It's the reality of what's going on. You accept it. The I of RAIN here stands for investigate. So you're looking into the causes and conditions of why or how, sorry, not why, but how this experience has come to be. You know, I was making reference to this the other night on a talk I was giving. And, sometimes when I get home from work, I've had a day of listening to people's stories, and then I'm feeling sad. And I'm thinking, wow, why am I feeling sad? I kind of look into this. Not so much, again, I say not why, but how am I feeling sad? I inquire into it. And sometimes it can be discursive. And I go back to think about, oh, yes, I heard this story early in the morning. It was really quite a sad story. I can understand why I'm feeling sad now. It's kind of come up. Now I've allowed it to filter up. I'm feeling this emotion. It's an understandable thing. But it doesn't have to go that discursively. It can go simply as, oh, there's sadness arising. That's interesting. That's curious. What happens to me when I'm feeling sad? How do I experience this sadness? Then the N of Michelle MacDonald's RAIN refers to non-identify. And this means you don't take it personally. You see it for what it is, and you see it as not a thing, but a stream of dependently arising processes and interactions. It's this kind of coming together of things. It's not who and what we are. It's just this passing event. We don't have to identify with it. So, and that's all liberating. I'm just going to mention Tara Brach's version of RAIN now, because I want to do an exercise. I'm going to invite you to an exercise that involves both these RAINs. Tara Brach's version of RAIN is the R stands for recognizing something. Then the the A stands for allowing in this case, similar to acceptance, and you're allowing something. You're allowing something to be rather than rejecting it. The I stands for investigate again, and in this case, the N stands for nurture. Nurture. So you nurture whatever is wholesome that is arising, basically. So they're very similar, and they're usually used for difficult emotions, but I would say that they can also be used for the cultivation of wholesome experiences because it's the same process. We recognize a wholesome experience, such as the experience of gratitude. Then we accept it. It is what it is. This is the reality of this moment. Then we investigate it. And we sort of, in our investigations, it's almost like we're enhancing it. Ah, this is interesting. How do I feel this? And how, discerning it from, say, the experience of metta, or discerning it from the experience of compassion, for example. So in that kind of investigation, you're actually enhancing it. And then the N, you would not identify with it. It is just a process. It's not something you take away and own. It's not something that you can say, this is myself, but it is a process that is arising, and we can nurture and nourish it. Okay, so that's my little blurb for today. And in a few moments, I'll invite you to a meditation where I'll invite you to settle and stabilize your attention into quietude and stillness as best you can. Then I'll invite you to apply rain to whatever you're experiencing. I'll invite you to look into your heart and see if you can see what emotion or what state of mind is arising in that current time, and then apply rain. Okay, so just before I end my little spiel, what we'll do is we'll have 2 guided meditations this morning, back to back. Some of you may wish just to kind of stay in meditation posture when the 2 meditations cross over. Otherwise, you can move at the sound of the bell. And then we'll have a break at. Then we'll probably have another silent meditation where you just sit by yourself with your own practice. You can carry on with your own practice or do what we just you've been guided in. Then we'll have a break at about 20 to 11 Australian Eastern Daylight Time, where we can just have a cup of tea, go to the loo, or do what you like. And then I'll give a Dharma talk at 11. And sometimes after the Dharma talk, we have another guided meditation. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just have discussion. So we'll have lunch at 12:30 Australian Eastern Daylight Time, and back at 1:30, where we have 2 silent sits or 1 silent sit. And you can do walking if you prefer to walk. Many of you may know how to walk. If you don't know how to walk, be attentive to walking, basically. Do like you're doing with your meditating, and just walk and focus your attention and stay present with the experience of walking. That's as much as I'll say right now. There's more detailed instructions, of course, elsewhere. And then we'll come together again at 2:30 for a Dharma discussion. Okay. Any questions about anything thus far? All right. So I'll just turn off the recording and get ready for the guided meditation.